Yes, tonight we have the wonderful Audrey and Zsumana with us to share their story of what it was to be on the School of Leadership, which is our week-long residential for 17 to 25s-ish. We get together in this incredible farm called the Poplars in Gloucestershire, and we do this deep dive into leadership development, spiritual formation, character growth. And it's an incredible week, an incredible journey. And I remember meeting these two ladies as they rolled up the driveway, pulling their suitcases, ready to embark on this week. What was in front of them, they didn't know. But it's amazing to hear some of the stories of what God did during that time and how that's impacting them as they go out now and lead in the spheres. So we're going to kick off with Zsumana. Zsumana, you work in healthcare as a dentist, and you came on the School of Leadership. How old were you again?
I was just 21 at the time.
Just turned 21. You came on the School of Leadership the year before your final year of training to go and be a fully qualified dentist that you are now. How did the School of Leadership equip you to go into that sphere?
Yeah, great question. So when I started university, I quickly realized that dentists are terrifying. And being surrounded in that environment by so many people, all of my superiors having so many letters after their names and seemingly never being wrong, I think it quickly led me to, it shaped my idea of what a leader looked like, and that looked like someone who never made a mistake. And one big thing that School of Leadership really helped me realize was how much that is a lie. Being around people who led in such an authentic way and were so vulnerable in all of their shortcomings, it really reminded me of that verse in 2 Corinthians 12 about when Paul says about how he takes pleasure in his weaknesses. And I saw that lived out so well at School of Leadership. And it really pushed me to go back into that sphere, which I think is so pertinent at the moment when, due to COVID, we are, as healthcare workers, we're very almost idolized as heroes and seen as superhuman, people that don't need rest and don't make mistakes. And to be a leader in that sphere and live out that culture of vulnerability and authenticity, that yes, we do sidestep and sometimes we do things wrong, and that's okay, I think is so important at the moment.
Wow. So for you, that week showed you a different model of leadership that was actually around not having everything sorted and pretending that everything's perfect, but actually of being real, about being vulnerable, about, saying when you need help. And yeah, I can't imagine more of a wake up call of a season for that kind of thing to be worked out in what you're doing. Thank you, Zsumana. So Audrey, you were 18, which I was so surprised when I found that out. You were 18 when you joined us on the School of Leadership. Can you paint us a picture of the 18-year-old Audrey? Because you're now 23. What was the 18-year-old Audrey like?
So I met the School of Leadership when I was 18. I was very unconfident. I didn't know the power of my own voice. I'd always been thrown and thrust into these positions of leadership, which was great, but I never really knew how to lead other people, let alone myself, effectively. And so that was what I was seeking when I went to the School of Leadership. And really what I took away from the school was the toolkit to help me along the journey, things that I could understand, things that I could take home, work at, and then use to carve my own journey into leadership.
So you talk of a toolkit that an 18-year-old Audrey left that week with, and then you've gone into business now, which we'll hear more about in a minute. Could you tell us a little bit more about the toolkit? Open that toolkit up for us. What does that look like?
So some of the key things that were in that toolkit was just the importance of vulnerability, like Zsumana said. Really being vulnerable with myself about my strengths, my weaknesses, and also being just open and honest with those people around me. That's not something that I was particularly good at or did very often, but I found that it took me so much further when people just saw the real me. And then also just key things like integrity and discipline and diligence in what I'm doing, and just really applying myself, because it's not just me that I'm doing whatever I'm doing for, it's actually serving God and seeing that higher purpose there. And so those are the two key things that I really took away and that I still use now in business.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And in many ways, hearing these stories, I'm so aware, like we're talking through a screen, we're not all face to face. Life has changed. We are now walking through COVID-19. And it's what's amazing is it's not the things that toolkit is not irrelevant anymore. The stuff, Zsumana, you've already mentioned that there's things that you learned on that week that you're now living out on a day-by-day basis that's been so crucial. So can you just open that up for us a bit more, Zsumana? What things have you drawn on from your own relationship with Jesus, but also your time on the School of Leadership, what you learned about your character and building your character through particularly tough times? What kind of things have you drawn on through this season?
So I think two main things really stood out to me in these past couple of weeks while we've been on lockdown. And one thing came to my attention when we were in School of Leadership, where I learned a lot about personalities and how different personalities have strengths and weaknesses, because we did quite a lot of discussion around Myers-Briggs. And before the School of Leadership, I'd always struggled with this idea of myself, seeing myself as an introvert and that being a bad thing, being tired out by people and how that was almost like a flaw. And I feel that during this season, that was almost something that happened even more because of this kind of anxiety that is in culture at the moment. My patients are a lot more anxious about things that they wouldn't be. And so I almost have to be there in a different way. I have to be there for them in a different way than I was before. And that requires so much more of me. And so learning that in School of Leadership and having those discussions about how actually the fact that I am so tired out is not necessarily a flaw, but that it's because I am just so focused on these people that I give myself and my full attention to them, and knowing how much God delights in that, but that he is also has so much grace. He has also so much grace for my imperfection that comes along with it. The idea that I have to then draw myself away from people to himself and to be alone, to recharge. I've really been just coming back to this idea, and the teaching that I've had at School of Leadership has been absolutely brilliant in getting me to be more self-aware about these things. And then I guess the second thing, but almost more important, is the tool of scripture and learning scripture and going back from a day of anxiety, which is anxiety about my job and anxiety about what tomorrow will bring and what new guidelines will be introduced in dentistry that I have to relearn, and having this wheel in my mind spinning at night and just being able to recite parts of a psalm to calm me down. I have been honestly so incredibly life-changing, and I've experienced that power through God's word like I never would have experienced if we hadn't been in this situation before.
So for you, there was definitely a very practical tool of knowing yourself and understanding yourself and how you can use your skills and your tools to reach out to others and be there for others, but also not burn yourself into the ground. But then also that very, very real sense of building your life on the word of God when everything else seems to be falling apart, or when everything else seems to be anxiety led. That's incredible. And it's incredible to think of those things that are charging you as you go into healthcare, that as you're recharging with the word of God and with an understanding of yourself and how he's calling you to lead as Zsumana in that space. Thank you. So Audrey, you're in the business sphere. We've heard about COVID-19 through the eyes of someone in healthcare. What, first of all, is your role, and what's that look like for you during COVID-19?
Yeah, so I'm a junior strategy consultant at a company called Anthesis. What we do is that we basically help companies such as Nestle develop their operations to become more environmentally sustainable, to do less harm to the world, and then also more socially responsible, so looking after the people at the end of their chain. In essence, what COVID has looked like is helping us to navigate, or help these businesses to navigate past COVID into a new world, a new way of working, which is what I think a lot of us are doing currently. So that's what my role is looking like now.
Wow, thank you. And for you personally, what have you had to draw on in terms of your own relationship with God, the stuff that you've worked on in terms of your character and your leadership for this time now? What's it look like for you personally?
Yeah, so very similar to Zsumana actually. Prior to COVID starting and lockdown, I was very addicted to being busy, very, very addicted to being busy, always doing something. And it's something that God had been challenging me on. But with COVID, I keep calling this like a forced Sabbath, a time to just completely rest. And I always forget to tell myself that God doesn't want us to just go, go, go. He wants us to work from a place of godly rest. And so throughout COVID, that's something that has been at the forefront, something I've been very intentional in pursuing. And throughout this time, I feel like God's really been restoring me, restoring my energy, restoring my supplies. And so that's a key thing. And then also something as well that's been really powerful in this time is just being intentional. So intentionality with people and community and realizing how important that is. And especially with COVID, I feel like it's brought on a new sense of community, and I'm really digging deep into that.
Amazing. And just like, as we finish, I've got here in front of me a screen of just like a powerhouse of these two incredible women. You're both in your 20s, you're in your different spheres. We have been through an unprecedented time. We're still in it. It feels like we don't know what the news is going to hold tomorrow, like never before. There is a sort of shaking going up, not just from coronavirus, but also now with this sense of the reality of racism, and that changing the conversation, changing social media, changing every sphere of society. That we are now in this time that it's vital for us as One Life, if we're all about championing young people to go into these spheres and to lead godly, characterful, exceptional lives that bring about the kingdom of God. We've got to hear from you. What are you seeing right now? And how is that affecting you? Zsumana, would you just share with us what you're seeing and how that's affecting you?
Yeah, I think at the moment, through this unprecedented season, I can just see God stripping back and just pruning society. And I feel like he's really using what otherwise could be a very hopeless and harmful situation to really shed light on almost the most vulnerable in society. We've been seeing that with BME groups and the highlight that that's had with COVID. And one thing that I've been particularly noticing is how much more praise there is in society for blue collar workers, people who we've always never noticed before, but now this situation is causing us to really appreciate that we can't really function without them. And then I guess also the oppressed, God is shedding light on all the institutional racism that's been happening and how much that's been impacting people's lives that we've been absolutely blind to. And so I think there's something beautiful unfolding in how God is using this time to really show us the things that matter, and using this interruption that gives us space to really engage with those things that otherwise maybe we wouldn't be so able to, because we'd be so distracted by our own worries and our own lives. But now we suddenly have this space to really see what really is going on.
Brilliant. So we've got a space to see, and see perhaps people that have been unseen before. That's fascinating. Thank you. Audrey, same question to you.
And that's a really powerful question. Right now, I'm seeing God that's raising up a generation of people who will be bold, courageous, stepping out their comfort zone and speaking truth to power. You know, right now, especially in light of COVID, we're seeing racism at the forefront. You know, racism that has existed for generations and generations. Systemic racism, in schools and education through police brutality, it's all coming to the fore. And this is against God's heart. And we're seeing a generation who's saying, no, that's enough. That's absolutely enough. And also we're seeing the cries of so many people, cries which have gone unheard for so long, now being heard, now being understood, now being recognized, and now actually putting action to something that should have been put to action ages ago. It's not God's heart, it's not the gospel, it's against us, and that's so powerful. And coming from this, there feels like there's going to be such a change in society. in terms of how we see people, how we value people, and how we move forward in continuing to speak truth to power.
So you are both two of our One Lifers. You're people that have joined us for the School of Leadership. You love Jesus. You've gone out into your spheres. And the phrase that I kept getting as you were talking, and that I just want to finish on, is this phrase, walking out. And I'd love to ask you both, what are you going to walk out of this season with? And by that, I mean, I think it's around letting our, it not just be our talk, but let it be our walk. And how we put that into action in this season, but also what are you going to carry out of this season as the dust settles of both coronavirus, as we look around us with the conversations, with the changes that we're fighting for, with this conversation around race. What are you going to walk out with, Zsumana?
So recently I came across this quote and I think it's really relevant for what's going on right now. It's a quote by St. Augustine, and he says, "Hope has two beautiful daughters. Their names are anger and courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to see that they do not remain as they are. Without them, hope comes to nothing." And I think that just really struck me, because in this season that could be so hopeless, where we could choose to be overwhelmed to inaction, I am really choosing to be hopeful. And I think it's very much a choice. And the emotions that come with it, anger and courage, how important they are, that is something that beautifully molds together. And I think it's something that you intentionally have to walk out, and you intentionally have to put yourself in that mindset, because it's so easy to feel overwhelmed and feel like there's nothing that you could do, but actually focusing on how much God's heart is for those emotions and how much those emotions are manifested in God is really important. So I think that's my hope, that we remain a hopeful generation walking out of this.
I see coming out of this and walking out of this, number one, a sense of intentionality. So continue to be intentional with relationships, with serving, with loving people around us. And I think COVID has shone such a light on that, and how important community is and looking after each other. And then the second one is real courage. You know, with everything that we're seeing right now, the boldness to speak up, the boldness to speak truth to power, the boldness to speak even if our voice shakes. I think that's so, so powerful, to speak things that other people are too scared to speak for. Having that real sense of courage against injustice, against the things that are going on in this world. I feel like that's something that's coming from this season.
So courage and hope. That's pretty exciting stuff to be having walked out in both business and healthcare and in your lives as people are trying to follow Jesus through this season. Ladies, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. Honestly, you've been an inspiration to us.